Hi everybody, in today's video we finally take our ability system full circle by including this new item type in the world that the player can attack and destroy, and upon destroying it we'll reward the ability to the player, we'll display it in the UI, and we'll make sure that this works with our save and load system, including things like persistence, so that we don't continue to display icons or ability pickups that you've already acquired. Hi, my name is Michael. Join me as we build an epic Metroidvania game in Godot 4 using GD script. This is the Metroidvania Forge. Alright guys, so just to give an overview of what we're going to be building here. Obviously I had to make a choice on how we're going to implement the ability system. And I think there's a lot of fun ways you could do this. You know, this could be something that you find in a special treasure chest in the world. It could be something that you acquire upon defeating a boss. Maybe even one of these item pickup items here that we're going to build today gets spawned when you destroy or when you defeat a boss. I don't know. That's up to you. But in general, what we're going to be building is just these simple little nodes. They've got animation. They've each got a unique icon based on the ability that they'll reward. And the player can simply attack them. And upon hitting it 3 times, it'll destroy the orb and reward the player with the ability. Okay, and so this is going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to update our player script. He's got values already built in that show whether or not he has an ability. So all of that stuff, all that scaffolding is built in. Even our save game and being able to save these abilities is all built in if you've been following along with the tutorial. So today is just about implementing this orb for the most part. And it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to be building a new scene here. And you can see that this scene, why am I seeing nothing? Let's go ahead and get an animation here selected. I think that's the problem, is I've got my orbs destroyed. Okay, here we go. Let's go to default. So we're going to build this scene where we've got a couple icons that we can use. We've got a breakable with a damage area built in. So you can see we're utilizing some of the nodes and systems we've built in this chapter to make this work. And then our ability script is going to allow us to select an ability type, right? So when we look at the playground and we look at these different ability pickups I've laid out in the world, you can see they've each got a different ability assigned. And whenever you change this ability, it's going to update the icon appropriately. Now, of course, this is kind of a unique thing. We've got 4 abilities here. You're only going to have one of each of these, item pickups in the world. So you have to be a little bit careful there, but this is how we're going to build it. And I think it's going to bring you some other ideas about how you can do things, because we're going to do things like hook up to when our breakable is destroyed, which, by the way, is a signal we never emitted when I built that. I think that was an oversight on my part while recording the video. So we'll clean up our breakable, make it so that it emits the destroyed signal. We'll add a new signal to the breakable when it receives damage, so that we know within this ability pickup script, we can update this sprite so that it's got the little cracks that you can see, right? We're going to give it just as much simple game juice as we can to make it fun. Obviously, it's got a breakable with particles on there that we've set up so that it, has some fun visual effect when you hit it. And yeah, that's what we're going to build today. And this is the final episode, at least official and planned episode of this chapter. So unless I find bugs that we need to revisit, this might be it for a little while. So let's get started building this thing. All right, let's go ahead and begin by creating the new scene that we're going to be using for the ability pickup item. Okay, so I'm going to come down to my general folder here where I've got the audio and some of these other things. And I'm considering this kind of a general kind of a node. So I'm going to just create a new folder here, call it ability pickup. And then we'll create a new scene as well inside this folder. Okay, so here we go. We've got our ability pickup scene. I think it's fine that it's a node 2D, because what we'll do is we'll add all of the items that we need as children of this node. Okay. And one thing that's going to be fun as we build this is we're going to utilize some of the new node types that we've built. So like we're going to use a damage area and a breakable object here to make this something that we can break. And so I want to start though by just adding some of the basics. Let's add a sprite 2D. I was going to type the name of it. I'm going to call it ability sprite. And just make this accessible by a unique name. Now, before we're ready to actually configure this sprite, though, we need to bring in this sprite sheet. It's in the download file for this chapter. I just haven't brought it into my project yet. So I'm going to come over, I'm going to actually put it in my player folder, because these abilities relate to the player and I may use them elsewhere. So I'm just going to come and I'm going to open the sprites folder under my player folder in the file manager here. Okay. And then go ahead and open that itch.io file, the download. Okay. I've got the player abilities download zip file unpacked and opened here. And I'm just going to go into sprites and there's this abilities sprite. I'm going to copy that and just paste it here into my player folder and we should be good. We've used all the other sprites and we should have previously grabbed all the icons and all the audio wave files. So if you haven't, you can bring those in. I've just got those in their appropriate folders underneath general in here. Okay. So let's go ahead and just select that abilities PNG for the sprite here. And as you can see, I've got a few things going. We've got this glass orb that can break because this is going to be breakable. So we're going to give it a little bit of animation there. We've also got an animated sprite for each ability. So this is going to be dash, double jump, ground slam, and the morph roll. And you can see it's, let's see, what is that, 5 by 5? So if we come to our animation and set our horizontal and vertical frames to 5 each, we should end up with a nice little sprite just like that. Now we're going to want an animation player. We're also going to want to add a breakable. So if we add one of these breakable nodes, obviously we're going to need to configure this as well, right? It requires a damage area. So we'll add a damage area node. And of course the damage area is going to require that collision shape. So we can add a collision shape as well. Okay. And we got to configure the collision shape. I'm going to go ahead and just give it a circle shape or something like that. And we can resize this later if needed, but it's going to be roughly this size. What did I put it to? 19. Let's make it 20. Holy cow, 20 pixels maybe. I like a nice even number. Okay. So we've got a breakable. We need to just make sure that this is configured in a way that we can hit it. So let's adjust the collision on this. And we can turn off the mask and it needs to be on the breakable layer so that we know that it's a breakable. And let's also go ahead and configure this. By default, we've got some audio on here. We've got hit and break, which are kind of like these default wood type sounds, or break, just kind of a generic, right? There's the hit and here's the break. Okay. But actually we've got some unique sounds that I've prepared just for this. So we're going to come in here and I'm going to go to quick load, and both of these abilities should have the ability, we've got ability crack and ability acquire. So the crack is what we'll use here on hit. It sounds like this. And I'm sorry, that might actually be a little bit ear piercing. If you guys don't like it, by all means, feel free to replace it. I'm going to go ahead and quick load the ability acquire as well on the break. Okay. It's kind of a combination of sound effects. Also a little bit loud. I don't know. I thought I balanced those pretty good before I pushed them, but they are kind of loud. You know, we can adjust those if we need to. But there we go. We've got the breakable configured, the damage area. We should be good to go on this. One thing we can do is I want to give this a fixed count. So instead of having 3 hit points, I want it to always take 3 hits to break, something like that. Okay, this is a little thing that we set up when we built the breakable, but we didn't really utilize it a whole lot. Here is a spot where we definitely will. Now we can also give this some hit particles. And what I want to do is I'm not going to load, let's give it 2 hit particles. I'm not going to load an existing one. Instead, I'm going to come in here and just make a new hit particle setting. So this is a resource that's local to this scene. It only exists here. You can't load it elsewhere. But we're just going to use it for real basic. So this first one, I'm going to just leave it as 8 particles and leave it on white and don't even need to give it a texture. We're just going to use just a pixel particle. And same or similarly for this second particle, we'll maybe reduce the count to something like 5. And I'm going to make it kind of a greenish color, something that maybe matches this color in here. In fact, if we want, it might be smart to eyedrop that. Oops, click it again. Get that blue-green kind of color in there, okay? So there we go. We've got some particles when we hit it. Now we're going to want to do something similar for when we destroy it, and we'll just make it 2 particles. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, let's see if we can copy these. So I'm going to copy, is there a copy? There's copy. Come down here and paste. And actually I should paste as unique. And then I'm going to copy this second one, copy, and paste it as unique down here. Okay, so we should have a white and a green particle. I'm just going to bump up the number of white particles a little bit and the green ones quite a bit. In fact, maybe even more than that. I don't know. We'll try it out. Okay. So we're going to have just this effect with these two types of particles when we hit and destroy this. And we'll test that out pretty soon. In fact, let's go ahead and save this and go to our playground, and let's add Shift-Control-A and add one of these ability pickup scenes. I'm going to just move it somewhere appropriate, and it put it right there at the player's feet, it looks like, but I can't see anything. Part of that is going to be due to how this is configured. So let's come in here. I'm going to just select the root node, ordering, and let's set the z-index to 1 maybe, and then go back. There we go. Now we can see it. So if we run this, I think we should be able to hit it. There we go. Now it's broken. It took 3 hits to destroy. So we know that that breakable is more or less working. And we've got a slight issue because the breakable is a child of this ability pickup. And so while the breakable might be destroyed, all of this other stuff remains in place. Now there's one other visual element that we want on this. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this ability sprite, and I'm going to call it orb sprite. Okay. And it's good that it has unique name on. This is going to be the same texture. So it's nice to duplicate that. But instead of the frame being on the default, we're going to just bump it up to, I don't know, whatever frame it is, 20. Yeah, that was right. This orb. So you can see we've got different frames for the orb. Like each hit will crack it, crack, and then it'll shatter. Okay. But I'm just going to leave that like so. And actually, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to take this animation player and drag it under my ability sprite. And I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to put it one under the orb sprite as well. So we're going to have 2. Actually, I don't think duplicating is the right way to handle that. It might copy some sort of resource reference. I'm just going to add an animation player here to the orb sprite, because I'm going to animate each sprite separately. So this will help me remember what's going on here. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and rename this as well. Ability anim. Make it accessible by unique name, and we'll call this one orb anim. Just trying to keep it short. Okay. So that we've got some different places where we can hook up animations for each of these things. Okay, now let's go ahead and build out the animations for the ability sprite real quick. And so I'm going to just make sure I've got that selected and make a new animation. And let's start with the dash animation, which is what it is on currently. That's why I started with it, right? And if we select the ability sprite, we'll just go ahead and key the frame. And there's 5 frames of animation, right? So I can just key this 5 times. Now, before I do that, though, I'm going to set it to 0.1 second interval. Okay, and I'm going to key it. So frame 0, 1. Oh, yeah, create. Go ahead and do that. Okay. Now you can see this is a half a second animation, so we can adjust our time here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on looping and hit play. And there we go. We've got this just little animated icon. So if we save this and run, you'll see, oh, you know what? It's not working because we're not playing any animation. Let's make this play by default to start. Okay. There we go. So now this is what the abilities will look like in game. You'll have a little animated icon. And we're going to, of course, make this dynamic based on the type, which ability this pickup is associated with. So let's come in here to our animation player again. And I'm going to go ahead and just real quick create the other 3 animations that we need. So we're going to have animations for double jump, ground slam, and the morph roll. And they're pretty simple and straightforward, just the same 5 frames of animation. So we can kind of just go through and increment those. So I'm going to just speed through that real quick. Okay, I've completed these. Let's just preview them. So here's the double jump animation. Hit play. Okay, just some arrows, chevron shapes pointing upward. We've got a ground slam. And these don't fit in the orb super well. You know, you have to forgive me. This isn't 100% production quality artwork. It's just getting us there. And then we've got the morph roll. Okay. So these are the icons that we'll use. And we'll build code so that we can select the appropriate one depending on the type of pickup. Just make sure you get those animations set in place, that they're looping, that they all work, and then we're ready for the next step. Now let's actually do let's do an animation for this orb when it's destroyed. I'm going to make a new animation. I'm just going to call it default. And I'm just going to save this keyframe that we've got. Okay. And I'm not really going to do anything with this other than set this one to the default animation. Okay. And I'm going to make it short. I don't want it to loop or ping pong. I accidentally clicked that. We'll just make it 0.1 seconds long. Okay, so that's just the default animation. And then let's duplicate this and we'll call it destroy. Okay. And then this one might be longer, but let's go ahead and just set this up. It's not a very intricate animation, right? When we look at the orb sprite, it's got frames 20, 21 is when it's been hit once, 22 it's been hit twice. And then here on 23 is where we will start this animation, which is only 2 frames long. Okay. So kind of a stupid animation, you know. But what we'll do is we'll just use that to add a little bit extra effect. And what I'm going to do here is let's go ahead and add a keyframe for the visibility of this. So I'm going to turn visibility. We'll keep it on. Let's turn it on, drag that to the beginning, and then we'll just insert a new keyframe here where we can turn it off. Oops, I still had the first one selected. Make sure I select that new one. Okay. So now it'll disappear after it's broken. Okay. And there we go. That's all we need for that simple animation for the orb sprite. We'll control the break damage appearance just through frames probably instead of using an animation. Okay, so let's talk about and start building the script that we're going to need for the ability pickup. So I'm going to come up here, right click and say attach script, which will give us the name that we want. And yeah, I'm going to just leave that all alone. We'll go ahead and create this. Okay, so the class name that we'll give this is going to be ability pickup. And of course that does extend, or not a capital E, but extends node 2D. Okay. In addition to this though, I want to give it an icon and I want to make it a tool script because we want to be able to change the type of ability and see that reflected in the editor. So when we change that, we want it to update. So we'll make it a tool. And then let's give it the icon. Now in the general folder, we've got, in our general icons, we've got an ability pickup icon. Go ahead and use that. And we're not going to need the process function. And I'm going to delete this comment on the ready. Now, before we move forward though, I'm going to do a quick restart of the project so that I can see the icon working in the scene tree. So here we go. Okay, cool. We've got the ability pickup icon now. And when we look at our playground scene, you can see the ability pickup here, right? It's got the nice little icon going on with it. So it's easy to see in the scene tree. Let's come back into the script and let's start building this out. So there's going to be several things that we need to have with our variables. We're going to need to store a type, the type that the variable is, and we're going to control that using an enum. Okay, so we'll set that up. And then we're just going to need reference to all of the various nodes that we're going to need to manipulate within this scene. So let's start first off with an enum called type. Okay, and the types that we're going to have will just correspond with our abilities. So we're going to have double jump. I'm going to just spell these with all caps. We're going to have dash. We'll have ground slam and morph roll. We could shorten that to morph maybe. Okay. So there we go. Those are our types. Now we also need to have an export variable that corresponds with the type. So export. Oops, I got a little space in there, didn't I? Okay, so by default, we'll set the type to the double jump type. And because we want to respond to this when it's changed, we're going to go ahead and give this a setter function. So we're going to say set value. And then what we'll do is obviously we want the type to become the new value. And then we're going to have something that sets the animation that it should be playing back. So we'll call that set animation. And I'm trying to get better at using the syntax properly. Underscore is something that you'll use generally if it's like a locally scoped kind of a function. You don't want other scripts to see it. So I'm going to make this function here. And there we go. Right now, it's just going to be called set animation. And we don't need to pass it any variables because we can just refer to the type, to this type variable to figure out what we need to, okay? Now, before we move on and finish these functions, I want to just bring in the access to the other nodes that we're going to need, the onReady variables. So we're going to need both animation players, right? So that we can access those animations. We're also going to want our breakable. I'm going to bring that in. And let's go ahead and grab a reference to our orb sprite because, like I said, we're not going to use the animation player to change it to make it look more cracked. We'll just manipulate the frame directly, and that should work okay. And I think we're good with that. Okay, so we've got our type, and we've got our export or our onReady variables, so we have access to these. Okay, it would make sense to start with our ready function, but I want to build this set animation because we're using it here and we're going to call it elsewhere. So let's build this so that it works and we can kind of test it real quick because it should work in editor if we build it properly because this is a tool script. Okay, now the first thing that we need to do, because this is a tool script, we may not have access to our animation player when we call this at all times. So just in case, we're going to build in a check. We're going to say if not, and what we're going to be looking for is our ability animation player, because that's the one that we're going to be manipulating. So if we don't find it, if it's null, right, meaning this hasn't found the reference yet, the onReady hasn't started, then let's go ahead and grab it. And we can just say anim, what do we call it? Ability anim equals, and we can just drag this in just like this. Okay. So that's going to give us a way to pull that in manually or before the onReady happens. And then all we have to do now is say anim, or man, I'm going to get that wrong every time, huh? Ability anim dot play. And we're going to need to get an animation name in here. Let's go ahead and just build it to do double jump just so we can test. Because what should happen is if we go to our playground and if we select this ability pickup and change this to dash, you can see it's playing the double jump animation now. Obviously, we hard-coded that. That's the only one it will switch to. So the next thing is let's build a function so that we can dynamically select this. We could do this inline in here, but in case it becomes handy later, I want to have a function that can just return that string so that we can get it from other functions if we need to. So I'm going to call this function ability name, or maybe it should be called get ability name. I think I like that. So this will return a string, not a strong, but a string. Okay. So obviously this is going to return something. And in fact, I'm going to give it a default of just quotes. And what we'll do here is we'll do a match statement. So we'll say match type. And then depending on the type, we can return a different string. So we can say first type dot double jump. We could return. And then we'll just return maybe the same name, but just all lowercase like that. Okay. We'll just do this for the rest. Okay, there we go. Now we can plug this function in right up here. And let's go ahead and just test this out again in the playground. We should be able to, at this point, change this to a different ability. So like dash or ground slam or morph. Uh-oh, morph didn't seem to work. Did I spell it wrong? Oh, I might have got the animation name wrong. Let's check out the ability pickup. What did we call? We called the animation morph roll. I think in my script, I got lazy and was starting to call everything morph. So let's just update that and go back here. And there we go. Now it did the morph roll. Okay. Now, likewise, the same way that we're setting that animation here, let's go ahead and just call this get ability name in our ready function. That way we know when we load this, it should, or not a get ability name. We want to call the set animation function. That's what we want to call them. This way, every time we load this scene, in a level, it'll just automatically update the animation to the appropriate one. And so if we go to our playground and let's just go ahead and duplicate this ability pickup a couple times. Like this, like this, like this. Okay. Then we'll come in here. This one can be dash. This one can be ground slam. And this one can be morph. There we go. So if we run the project, now we should see all the appropriate little guys in here. Yikes. Lots of sound effects. Okay. Obviously, they don't do anything other than let us hit them. But So far, so good. Okay, let's hop back into our ability pickup script. So one thing that's interesting is we're going to have to be able to do several things with this, right? We're going to have to be able to handle persistence, because once the ability is acquired, we don't want this to display in the world anymore. We also need to connect to our destroy so that we know when to acquire it, okay? And in addition to this, because this is a tool script, we don't want to run any of the following code in the editor. So we'll just say if engine, just do the typical thing, right? If it's in the editor, then let's return, okay? And I'm going to ignore the persistence for now, but let's go ahead and do this because we have access to our breakable. So we can go breakable.destroyed.connect, right? We can connect to this signal so that we know when the breakable is destroyed, we can respond. So on destroyed, maybe we can just call that. Okay. And let's go ahead and now build this function. So I think it's more important than these two. I'm going to build it up here. Okay. So we've got an on destroyed function now. Now, just like we have persistence here, we need to handle our persistence in the on destroyed. So we'll come back to revisit that. But for now, we can do two other things. We can queue free this if we want to. In fact, we might want to wait. Let's do this. Let's get our orb anim, and then we want to play destroy. Okay. And then let's await this and then destroy it. So I'm going to just say orb anim again, or await orb anim dot animation finished. Okay. So once that animation is finished, we can then queue free this. So we can just do queue free. That's just going to free the whole node. Okay. So this doesn't handle persistence, but it should get us a little bit closer to where we want to be. Let's go ahead and just test this now and see if we can destroy it and if it disappears. Didn't work. Did we get an error or anything? Oh, well, let's see. Okay, on destroyed. Let's go ahead and give a print. I don't know if I messed something up. Let's try this one more time. Nothing in the output. Wonderful. Let's check our breakable. Are we ever emitting the destroyed signal? Did we not hook that up? Sure enough, we never did. Well, that would have been nice to do back in that video. Okay, so where are we going to do this? On damage taken. What are my methods? On damage taken, clear collision, get configured, check for damage. Okay, yeah, it's going to be in here on damage taken. So every time we take damage, we have destroyed. In fact, I want to extend this a little bit now that we're here. You know what? I'm going to do this. Damage taken. And I'm going to go ahead here and, I don't think it matters too much. I'm just going to have it at damage taken signal. If you want it to emit more data with it, you can. So down here in our on damage taken, what we'll do is we'll do it here. If our hit points is greater than 0, then we can say damage taken dot emit. Else, this means it was destroyed. Then we can say destroyed dot emit. Okay. So we had totally ignored this in the past, but this is okay. This is a nice addition to make to this breakable feature. And now we've added an additional signal here, the damage taken. So we can connect to that as well. So let's go back. Now this should fire. Let's go ahead and test it. There we go. You can see it played the break animation for both of those, and then it queue freed the whole node. I'm going to go ahead and while we're at this, I'm going to just do a little bit of refinement. So this orb animation, I'm going to do something kind of cheaty here. I have this specifically here to animate this orb, but I also want to I'm going to go ahead and drag this out where we hide it. And then I'm going to queue some other things. I'm going to take our ability sprite. I don't want to animate the frames because that's going to mess with this other animation player, but I will animate the modulate. So I'm going to come here and we're just going to, in fact, we could do it to the ability pickup here if you've got others, but I want to just do this sprite. So I'm going to key the modulate and I'm just going to drag it. Well, we can just how about we just duplicate it? Select this. And then let's come like right here Control D to duplicate. And then over here, let's duplicate one more time, but just make this completely transparent. So now the break animation is going to look like this. Okay. And we can leave it at 1 second. That's fine. Let's go ahead and test that out and see if that looks a little bit better. Yeah, that does look better having that fade out. Okay. Cool. So we've done one step towards making this work better. Obviously, we don't need to print destroyed anymore, so I can remove that. This is working pretty good. And I think we're ready for one more fun feature. Okay, we need to make another note here. We also need to reward the ability, right? But I'm just trying to work out some of the mechanics of this a little bit. So I'm going to come up here and go to my breakable again. And I'm going to connect to this damage taken signal. We'll just call it on damage taken, because we want to be able to update the frame of the sprite, right? So it shows the cracks. Okay, so on damage taken, I think each time it takes damage, because we know this is just doing a specific count, we can just do this. We can just say orb sprite dot frame plus equals 1. Let's see if this works. That should get the animation or the update that we want. Okay, there we go. Gave it a crack. Now it's got two more cracks, and then it gets destroyed. Okay, that was pretty simple, right? A nice little way to just tie into that sprite. We don't need to build animations for that. It's way too simple to make an animation, unless you want to. Okay, now that we've built the visuals in and making it disappear when we destroy it and all of that, now we're ready to reward the abilities. And then once we reward the ability to the player, we will also hook up this persistence. But before we can do that, let's come into our player, and we need to find our variables where we have each of these. We need to make sure these are all set to false by default, right? Because obviously we don't want the player to begin the game with every ability. Okay, there we go. So this should be the default state of our player moving forward. Obviously, we manually changed those so that we could test and whatnot, but we're gonna try not to touch it anymore. Okay, save that. Let's go back to our ability pickup. And down here, when we destroy, we have to reward the ability. And so we can build a function for this. I think that would be appropriate. And then we just plug that in right here. Okay. Now, what is the reward ability going to do? It's actually going to be just like this get, or not get ability name, but this. Well, yeah, it is going to be like this, where we do a match and then we return a string. It's going to be very similar. Instead of returning a string, we're going to maybe set a value, set one of those Booleans, right? So what we can do with reward ability is let's start by getting a reference to our player so that we know we can set it. So player, we'll just use this get first node in group function that we've used in the past because we only have one player, okay? So this method will work fine for our purposes in this game. Except I've got a typo in here, don't I? Player. I'm the player. Okay, so we grab our player, and then we'll just do a match now. So based on the type that is assigned to this node, we'd know what ability to update on the player script. So we're going to have double jump. In this case, we're going to say player dot double jump equals true. Pretty simple, right? I'm going to go ahead and just copy this. And then, of course, we need to change all of these. So this one will be dash, and this will set the player's dash ability to true. Okay, then we've got ground slam. There we go. And lastly, we have our morph, which will set our player's morph roll to true. Okay. Now, one thing that you might be asking is how do we save these? We've already accounted for that. So unless you haven't been following along with the series, we already have that built in. So let's just go ahead and take a quick peek at our save manager. Here in our save manager, we do store these abilities here, right? We kind of already built this in previously. So we're going to save the value of these based on whatever we have in our player. Okay, I hope that makes sense. You know, if you've got questions about that, drop it in the comments. Or if you haven't been following along, then you can look at the whole series playlist. And we built the save system in chapter 3, I want to say. Okay, let's go ahead and go back to our ability pickup. I think we're actually good here. Let's see, are we actually calling reward ability? Did we? Yeah, we did. We put that in there. Okay. So when this is destroyed, it should reward the ability. So let's go ahead and test this out. Since we've got them all placed right here, I don't have double jump right now, right? No double jump. So let's try breaking this. There we go. Now I've got double jump. Now I don't have the dash, but I can break this. Now I've got the dash. And there we go. Okay, so it's as simple as that. And in fact, let's go ahead and save our game and quit. Then when we run it again, if I load this, I should have all those abilities. Yep. Perfect. Okay, so we know that this feature is working and we know that it's working with our save data. One thing that's not working with our save data is persistence. And you'll notice that this silly ground slam block also doesn't have persistence built in. Was kind of an oversight. I don't know how you're going to want to handle that. So I'll build a follow-up video where we will make that persistent as well. But let's go ahead and address the persistence next of our actual ability pickups. Okay, because I don't want to mess with this, I don't want to get too sidetracked with this. I'm going to take the where is this thing? Is it this breakable? No, where's my ground slam breakable? See, I should have given that a unique icon. Slam breakable. There it is. Okay, I'm going to just move this out of the way right now because maybe it's still here so we can test on it a little bit. But I want to be able to work with this. I just don't want to have to deal with that right now. Sorry, guys. I'm being precious about it. Okay, so let's look at these. We kind of already commented in our script, I guess, here for the ability pickup that we need to handle persistence. It's going to have to be set when it's destroyed, but it also has to be handled when it loads. So, once it's been marked as used or whatever, then it just needs to not or destroy itself, I guess, when the level loads, okay? Now, because we've already built functionality for handling persistent data, this is really straightforward. So what we can do is we can go save manager, and then we can say dot persistent data. And what we need to do is we need to look up the ability name. Now, this is kind of critical. We need to make sure that these strings here match the properties that we're going to save in our save manager. So let's just double check that we've got, in fact, maybe I'll just copy these and let's come over here and paste it. Okay, so just so we can double check, we've got dash. Now, if I select this, it should be the same as that. Yeah, double jump, same thing. Okay, looks the same. Ground slam, morph, roll. Okay, so that's good. We need those strings to match because obviously we're going to be comparing this ability based off of this string to see if it's been stored in our persistent data. And so if we have a naming mismatch, that's just not going to work. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that now that I've confirmed that it should be good. Then what we'll do is we never finished writing this. So in our persistent data, what we can do is, let's look at this. This is a dictionary, right? And now we can pass in a key that we want to get the value of. This is a key value pair, right? You may have heard that before. And so what we've got is that the key we want is, of course, the ability name. So what is it? Get ability name. Okay. And so that's going to return whichever of these is associated with this particular node. So save manager.persistent data at this key. And now we can just set that to, we can just say like acquired, right? Which is a really weird word and hard to spell. Yeah, maybe you do something else like collected. Spelling becomes important, but this is fine. So what we've done is we've said, okay, we've acquired that ability. And what this will do, when we look at a dictionary, if we call a key and set the value and the key doesn't exist, then it's actually going to create the key value pair. Okay, so we don't have to have that necessarily saved for this to work. I think it should work anyways. So this should set a new persistent data for each item. So let's test this out. First, I'm going to go ahead and just run this. I know it's not fully hooked up, but we should be able to look at our save data, and I'm just going to destroy one. Okay, a double jump is destroyed. Now what we need to do is I'm going to use F5 shortcut to save. I think that worked. Now I'm going to come in here to my, let's see, where is it? Oh, user data folder. Okay, so we should have been on save one since I'm testing. Let's go ahead and open this. Okay, you can see right here, double jump acquired. I hope you can read that okay. So you can see because I just broke the double jump and then saved it, it marked that as acquired. Okay. So then what we need to be able to do in response is once that is saved, we can check it. And we're just going to do this right in here. We can just check when this loads. Hey, does the key, like, have we already acquired this ability? And if so, what do? Queue free it. We don't need this node in the scene. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to say if save manager dot persistent data, and I'm going to use the get or add function. So with get or add, we need to do the same thing. You could see we need to provide the key. So we'll say get ability name. And then by default, we can default it to an empty string instead of null. So if when we check this, it hasn't been acquired, it is going to add this persistent data to our persistent, but the value is going to be an empty string instead of acquired. But what we're doing right here so far is we're just actually getting it. So if this equals acquired, then we can respond and we'll just say queue free. And then we can return. We don't need to do anything else. Queue free is going to queue it up to be freed on the end of the frame, but we might as well return. We don't need to do any of this other work. Okay. So now when we load the game, obviously this is a new game. We haven't destroyed anything yet. If I hit F7 and load it right now, you can see that the ability I acquired, double jump, it no longer displays. Right? So perfect. Now I should be able to destroy these. And let's save it the appropriate way. I'm going to close, run the game. I'll use my F7 shortcut to load it. And there we go. All of those ability pickups are gone, right? So there we have it. We've now built a system for us to acquire abilities. Now I want to do one last thing before we wrap up this video, because I want there to be some visual to represent it. In our pause menu, we've got some abilities here. Our map's all messed up because I'm in a playground level, but you can see that we've got a space here reserved for our abilities. So let's go ahead and just populate that real quick so that we have something to display, and it'll give you some groundwork that you can build off of if you so choose in the future. Okay, let's go ahead and build this little player HUD stuff. So I'm going to come in here to my player HUD folder, open the scene, not the player HUD. I'm saying player HUD. What do I mean? I mean the pause menu, don't I? Where's the pause menu? Pause menu. This is what we want. Okay, here we go. In the pause menu, I'm going to go ahead and make my pause screen visible. Okay, so we've got this section that I've built in here for abilities, right? And let's see. I'm going to go ahead and collapse anything I don't really need. I mean, we've added a label for abilities, but we don't really have anywhere to place them. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and in our pause screen here, let's just add a vertical box container. So it's going to be VBox container. Okay, so this is just going to line things up vertically. And I'm just going to drag it down and over. I'm going to add underneath this, I think a texture rect is a good way to go about it. We might swap over to the sprite 2D, but this should be the appropriate node to use. So let's go ahead and quick load the abilities. Oh, you know what this isn't going to give me? Let's make this an Atlas texture. And then let's load in these ability icons. Okay, so now I can edit this region, because really what we want, we don't need these to be animated per se. I suppose you could, if you want to make these animated, you very easily could. And for that, you might just want a sprite 2D. But I'm going to go ahead and my width and my height should both be 32. I guess I could have done that without the edit region. But now I've got this. Obviously, it's getting squished a little bit weird. So I'm going to keep size. I want this to maybe keep centered. Okay, so no stretching. And then let's look at the layout. for this. The transform, let's give it a custom minimum of 32, 32. Okay. It's still getting a width of 40, but that's because of our VBox container, I think. So now if I resize this VBox container to the smallest size that it can be, we should be at 32 by 32. Okay. So I'm going to rename this and I'm going to call it dash ability, or maybe let's do it this way, ability dash. Okay. And I'm going to duplicate this 1, 2, 3, and then I'm just going to rename them. So we'll have dash, we'll have, actually, I think double jump is probably going to be top of the list. So let's make this double jump. And then we can rename this to just dash. This can be our ground slam. I don't know what the order should be for these, but this is how I'm doing it. And then this will be the morph roll. Okay. I'm going to select these, make them all accessible as unique name. Now we just need to come into these and I'm going to select all of them and come here and say make unique. Yeah. Okay. So this way I can come in and adjust. So like this double jump, I want to change this region here. So it's going to have to move on the Y. So let's move it down 32 pixels. And then, ooh, I don't like that. Let's put it over 32. Which of these is going to be good? 64. Let's try one more. Plus 32. What is that? 96. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So we just need to come through and get the appropriate texture region for each of these. And I'm going to go ahead and just do edit region. I think that's easier. I think this is the region I want here, except I'm going to change my width and height to 32. And then I can adjust these. So this should be like 64 and this should be 64. Okay. Dang it. Look what I did. Look what I did. I'm going to keep that because this dash was easier to find, I think. I'm going to go ahead and say make unique. I guess selecting them all and doing that did not work, did it? I thought it would. I'll just go back to edit region. This is probably the best one right here. Close. Let's make this 32 by 32. This is obviously going to be 32, and this is going to be 96. Nope, not 103, but 96. Okay, there we go. Oh, this is easy. This one is 0, 0. You guys, I'm too tired. Okay, now lastly, this morph, let's make sure we make this unique. Okay, so the morph roll, we'll just change this as well. Probably that one. Okay, there we go. So we've got a list of abilities. Okay. Now what we can do is we can make these visible depending on what skills or abilities the player actually has. Okay, so I'm just going to come up here to my pause menu, script. And actually, you know what? Let's not do this here. We could. Let's go ahead and rename this VBox container to abilities list. We can just make this kind of standalone, work on its own. Okay, so this pause menu, let's go ahead and create a script in here. I've got a folder for scripts, so I just want to keep it organized. Let's make an abilities list script. Plop that right on here. Okay. And I'm not even going to give this a class name because this is going to be pretty self-contained. It doesn't need process. It doesn't need these comments, of course. Really, all we need is like a reference to each of our ability icons. Okay, so I'm going to drag those in. And then we could just come in here. Whenever this loads, we'll just get reference to our player. Okay. And then we can just set the visibility of each of these icons based on this variables within our player. So we're going to have ability dash visible equals player dot dash and so on. Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead and run this now. Now, if I pause my game, no abilities, but let's go ahead and destroy this first one. I now have double jump. And when I pause the game, you can see the little icon. Now, it would be pretty easy for you to adjust this code. And we've got all the abilities, right? You could come in and adjust this code or these nodes so that they're animated or whatever. Really, all we're doing is just changing the visibility. So it's pretty straightforward. They could even be buttons so that you could give focus to them. And when you focus them, maybe you pop up a little description, maybe down here at the bottom, it says like press jump twice to double jump, or I don't know, whatever. You could do that if you want to. I'm not going to do that. That's maybe a challenge for you guys. If you do have questions about how to implement anything like that, though, then please let me know, and I can consider making a video about that in the future. Now, we've made it this far. One thing that we haven't done is the persistence of this little destroyable piece of ground. But I'm going to leave that for a homework assignment for you right now. I want you to see if you can figure that out. Really, you could build within that breakable floor the same kind of persistence code that we built into our abilities. It's going to be a little bit different, right? Because it's not going to be when you acquire it, but we still could store that data when it's destroyed and load it. And hopefully that's something that you can work through and figure out on your own at this point with the tools and the knowledge that we've gained throughout this chapter. Now, otherwise, I'll probably revisit if there's any other little bugs or anything that crops up, but we've completed Chapter 4. We've built a complete system with our player abilities. We've shown how to make several different styles of abilities and how we can get them to interact with the world. The player can now take damage. He can deal damage, like to our dummies right now, right? So really, the next step to really bring this game to life and give it all of the things that we need to build a real Metroidvania is going to be to add enemies and eventually some bosses. I mean, without those, this game is pretty tame and pretty basic and boring, right? So that's what we're going to be doing in the next chapter. Now, I do need some time to prep for that because I've got art assets that need created, and I still have to work through and revise my plans for how I'm going to implement these enemies and which enemies I want to. And honestly, this next chapter is a lot of planning that's a little bit harder to do. And so I may even come to a point where I tackle the chapter in chunks. So I might start with the simple enemy first and then take another short break while I finish prepping for the more complicated enemies. But regardless, that's what's coming next, and it is coming. So if I'm gone for a little bit, or at least from this series for a little bit, don't worry. It is top on my priority list for my channel. In addition to that, though, if you've been on Patreon and you're one of my supporters, you've seen a recent post. I will be looking at producing some other content for my channel. And so if there's other topics or things that you hope I might address, and I know I've seen some of those mentioned in the past, right now is a time where I'm looking at that feedback and I'm considering what other videos I might be able to fit in while I prepare for Chapter 5. So that was kind of a long outro. I do appreciate all of you, so thank you for watching. Thank you for following along. I've had a ton of fun with this chapter. I hope you guys have too, and I really hope that you feel like you know how to build your player abilities now. This is the point where you can start crafting, refining, and just making these abilities your own and coming up with new and unique abilities. Another thing that would be really fun to do, and I'll probably do some sort of video with this, but find some ways to mix and match the abilities. Like what happens when you attack while you're dashing? Do you just want a regular attack to happen? Or maybe you want to have a new dash attack state. I don't know. Think of something cool or think of something out of the box. Maybe you want to build a pogo system like you have in Shovel Knight, right? And maybe there's things and ideas that you have. This is your chance to take what you've learned here and to try and build those abilities. And of course, if you need help, you can always join the Michael Games Discord server. We've got a lot of awesome people in that server, and everybody there is helpful. They're, varying experience levels from newcomers to somewhat advanced. Most of the more advanced people, though, are maybe newer to game dev. They come from other development type backgrounds, but they're there to help too. And there's some really great people in that community that will want to see your ideas and will be willing to answer questions that you might have. So that's one suggestion, is to join that. And of course, as always, I appreciate anybody who likes and comments on the videos. It really helps. It really helps my channel grow. And subscribe if you're new so that you can see what's coming next. And as always, we'll see you next time.